Welcome into Overtime, presented by McDonald's. Dewey Dailey along with John Bruce for today's episode. Should be a fun one. John, a lot of barn burners in Week 6's action. About when we're recording this just a few days ago, but by the time it comes out, it'll be almost a week ago. But nonetheless, a ton of fun games to watch, and we're here to talk about them and even talk about a little bit of Week 7, which hopefully lives up to what Week 6 left behind.
Yeah, Week 6 was one we weren't sure how good it was going to be, and the game that we knew was going to be really good lived up to the hype. And then some of those other ones were just nuts. I can't wait to talk about the SVC. I mean, it's going to be a little bit, but I'm excited to talk about just how ridiculous of a night it was on Friday.
So we'll start off with game reviews, then talk a few impact players, and then we'll wrap it up with game previews and our power rankings. But, John, if you want to kick things off with what I think we could count as probably our game. I know it's not the game we live streamed, but that was more so because we quite literally couldn't.
Yeah.
But definitely the game of the week in our coverage area last week down at Fairland is they took on Gallia in a little OVC action.
Yeah. It was crazy. 40-35 final. Fairland wins. They were up 21-7 at the half. Eventually got up 40-28 after Guy had battled back to tie it at 28, and were able to hold on late. But just kind of going through the game for Fairland, Quentin Cremines broke 4 tackles on their first drive to go 48 yards for a rushing score and put the Dragons on top early. But then Gallia took their only lead of the game when Braylon Rathburn connected with Hunter Shamblin for a 72-yard score for a 7-6 lead after the extra point. But Fairland came right back. Peyton Jackson did this a lot during the game, but he hit Bryson Hunt for a 10-yard touchdown score before Hunt picked off a pass that set up the last scoring play of the half when Jackson connected with Christian Collins for an 84-yard score. If you liked long touchdowns, this was the game for you. So we had 48, and then 72, and then 10, whatever. And then you got an 84. Well, to start the second half, Hudson Shamblin gets a pick 6 for the Blue Devils. So 21-14 at that point. After a quick 3 and out, Gallia's Cole Hines races in from 48 yards out. One of the shorter scores of the game. Jackson hit Hunt again. This one was only for 11 yards. So, kind of disappointing on that end. Gallia's Kenyon Franklin scored from over 40 yards out and then they got a 2-point conversion to tie the game at 28. Jackson hit Collins again for a 48-yard score before they forced a turnover when Keegan Smith had what was said as an acrobatic interception, and then he caught an 83-yard score to go up 40-28. Kenyon Franklin scored another long score that made it 40-35, but Guy was not able to get over the hump there at the end. Peyton Jackson for the Dragons was 14 of 21 for 391 yards.
That's ridiculous.
That's so crazy with the just yards per completion. He threw for 5 scores and the 1 interception, but Collins and Smith were each over 120 yards receiving. Collins with 2 scores, Smith with 1. Hunt was 89 yards receiving with 2 scores and 2 interceptions. Cremines was close to 100 yards rushing, so they had nearly 500 yards of total offense for Gallia or for Fairland in the win. Gallia, who'd been really strong defensively, was not as much in this game, but Rathburn was 25 of 34 for 306 yards and 2 scores. Franklin scored 3 times for the Blue Devils. Each Shamblin scored once. It's a disappointing game for Gallia, as I think they thought they were going to be a little better defensively in this game, but were really hurt on the long scores for Fairland. I know it had to be a really fun game to watch or at least cover. And
Man,
yeah.
I probably would have ran out of breath.
Yes.
I mean,
So it's probably better that we didn't get that one.
yeah, what was it, like four or five 50-plus yards, and then a couple of 40s in there as well? I mean,
just
that would have been a lot.
Yeah, a crazy game. This week in week 7, Fairland travels to play an improved South Point team. The most wins for South Point in 10 years at 4 currently. On Friday, and then Gallia hosts Colgrove, who might be our Jekyll and Hyde team of the year because they've been very up and down throughout the season so far. So that's a game for Gallia they can't sleep on because Colgrove has week by week has been really good some of those weeks.
So one other game we're going to look back on was Athens at Logan. We've pretty much said this anytime we talk about Logan, but another old SCOAL game. For Logan, although the SCOAL is no more, they play a ton of SCOAL teams. I mean, just looking at their schedule for this year, they have 6 with Jackson, Warren, Chillicothe, Athens, Marietta, and then Zanesville to finish it out. So still a pretty SCOAL-packed schedule for the Chieftains, but nonetheless, back to this game, Athens takes it 30-21. Now, this was kind of a coveted rivalry between these two teams. It was the last time, at least for now, that this game was on their schedules for the foreseeable future. The rivalry began in 1907. It was the 99th meeting between the two teams. The all-time series actually ends at 54-30-5 in favor of Logan. So Logan wins the all-time series, but Athens kind of ends it with a better taste in their mouth because they were able to win in the game. Now, in terms of kind of how the game went, Athens trailed 21-12 with 6 minutes to go, and then obviously 18 unanswered points in the final 6 minutes that allowed them to come out on top. They had 24 of their 30 points in the fourth quarter alone. With the win, Athens moves to 2-4, 1-1 in the TVC. Logan drops to 1-5. Now, statistically speaking, in the game, Braden Young was 24 of 28, so pretty efficient night for Young for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alex Perro had 18 attempts for 92 yards and 2 scores on the ground, and then Leo Martin and Seth Mart had one receiving touchdown apiece thrown by Young, obviously. And I don't know if it's Luke Kaiser or Luke Kaiser. It's Kaiser. I feel like that could probably go either way. Yeah. I'll say Kaiser just because that's kind of the generic way to say it. But Luke Kaiser, a 60-yard. I thought it was a fumble recovery for a touchdown, but I wrote pick 6. I can't remember now.
Defensive score.
Yeah, he had like a 50 or a 60-yard defensive touchdown to end the game. It was either a pick 6 or a fumble recovery for a score, but that pretty much put it on ice and put it at 30-21. And Athens picks up their second win in the season and what was, about as competitive as a game as you can ask for.
Yeah, for Logan though, that's 2 straight weeks where they've held a sizable lead or 2-score lead in the fourth quarter, and they lost both games. So they are about 1 quarter away overall, 12 minutes from being 3-3 and feeling much different about their season. But a 1-5 season at this point for Logan has to be a little disappointing, especially with how close they've been to picking up those other wins. So when we go to teams that were, at different, also lower in the wins category, Valley beating Northwest 7-6 in the Battle of 348. I think that's the road. That might be it.
You're asking,
about
as worse of a person as you can ask. I am,
but yeah, it's a game where Valley had not really been able to get much going so far in the year. Northwest was 2-3 coming in with a couple of 1-point with a 1-point loss to McLean that we did live stream, and they had some good athletes. Valley's got some good athletes, but really low on numbers for the year. Only 1 senior in the program, and not very many juniors either. So, a lot of underclassmen in this game. But Valley took a 7-0 lead early, but Northwest came down and scored. It was 7-6. Brennan Weiss for the Indians blocked the extra point, and they were able to maintain that lead throughout. Northwest was able to get into the red zone late, attempted a field goal with less than a minute left, and it was unfortunately no good for the Mohawks. And Valley was able to get in victory formation for the first time this year to earn a 7-6 win. The big player of the night was Connor Lentz for Northwest. He had over 130 yards total offense, and from all accounts, was not seeing the ball in the last drive. He had 62 yards receiving, only 4 rushes. The big difference when we watched them against McLean in week 2 was he started running the ball in the second half and was getting big plays, and they were not able to get him the ball in this game. And for them, they dropped to 2-4, like I mentioned. And it's a big win for Valley. It was looking like I wouldn't say a lost season, because when you're playing so many young kids, you're going to get something good out of it. But it looked like they might be looking at an over on the season, but they get a big win in a rivalry game on the road. Good win for Coach Crabtree. Tough loss for Coach Crabtree also. Coach Crabtree also got a win over Oak Hill on Friday. So a lot of Coach Crabtrees in the SOC too. And, it's a big win for Valley. For those kids, it's always good to see a team pick up a win at some point, even if it's you don't want to see anyone go winless on a season. So
right.
it's good for them. I know they work really hard down there, and it's going to keep that's a win that can keep kids in the program. That maybe you're like, oh man, like it was the lineman for the Broncos on Sunday was like, man, I've been here 7 years and all I've done is lost. It's deflating if you just see losing over and over again. So Valley picking up a big win for the program moving forward. So I think this game will be even better next year. So
and it was a pick 6 for Kaiser. I looked it up while we were
If you want to talk about dumb football, SVC in week 6, 76, 62, 45, 41, 35, 28, 22, and 12 were the point totals for the 8 teams. 321 points scored across those 4 games, an average of 40.13 points per team in SVC play. Adina and Paint Valley was 50-35 at the half. Like,
that's ridiculous.
Just ridiculous.
Like, really, their second half wasn't that great.
No.
I mean, it was good, but like not even close. It was like 85 combined, and then like 30 or 40 maybe.
Yeah, it was 26-6.
It's just 32.
Yeah,
compared to 85.
Yeah, so it's just a crazy night. Trent Walters for Westfall had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. Braylon Robertson had one of the greatest games, which we're going to talk about in the impact players, had one of the greatest games rushing in SVC history. I would argue probably a top 3 game in that area, maybe top 5. But
top 2, not 2.
Yeah. But it's just a crazy game. Like Unioto beats Piketon 45-22, and that was like one of the more normal games of the week. It's just Huntington was actually only down 2 against St. Trace at the half.
I think they were winning 6-0.
Were they?
One point.
Yeah,
I think during halftime, me and Kenny checked the score, and we were like we
yeah,
just couldn't believe it, because it was like. And I don't know, it was either 6-0 or it was like 7-6, but it was like close, and it was in the second quarter.
Yeah, I know it was 14-12 at the half. St. Trace was up.
Right. Yeah.
And then they actually, Huntington had a long drive, and then after they stalled out, Aiden Dunn had something like, it might have been a 94-yard like jet sweep score, because Coach Weir's on the scoreboard show was kind of laughing about, it was a 94-yard pass, but it was really just the little pitch in front. He had 179 yards and 2 scores in the game for Zane Trace. Joey Francis for Adina had over 100 yards and 2 scores through the air. Torelli Ward for Adina is lightning fast. I had a nice game for them. It's just, Ethan Summar for Unioto had 3 scores. They had 4 interceptions in the second half alone. Somebody played some defense across the league. Westfall, 62 points is crazy, but not even being the highest score of the night. Yeah. 76 for Paint Valley.
I think 76, that was the new single game record for points in school history, I think.
For Westfall, I think so. I know Unioto's is 72, so they passed that at least. So just an insane night across the SBC. It's just, these teams are maybe not the best defensive teams in the area, but
Big 12 football.
Yeah, it's Big 12 football right now in the SVC. I almost said SEC, but that'll be next year when some of those teams come in. But yeah. So what I had on this, we have each game, what happened in each game. My headline was stupid points in the SVC because 40 points per team in this.
Oh,
it's just nuts.
That's ridiculous.
And
then pretty much everywhere else it seemed like we talk about Valley Northwest 7-6, or we'll talk about Portsmouth and Cold Grove a little later. It's 14-6, and
right. It's just
71-40, or what is it, 76-41 Adina and Paint Valley. So
and it was just silly.
No, it's ridiculous. I mean, no defense, just 7-on-7.
Yeah, defense was very
hard to come by.
Yeah, and it was strictly suggested, but no one really listened to the suggestion on that. So, but yeah, it's a crazy night in the SVC. I don't know if it'll get there again this week, but there's a couple games that I think are going to be really high scoring. So, it'll be interesting here in week 7.
So we'll talk about some impact players from week 6. We'll start with a player we've already talked about a little bit, and Braylon Robertson had a big night against Adina on Friday.
357 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns.
Pretty good fantasy day.
Yeah, pretty good fantasy day. I think whoever had him in the Ride the Wave league probably won their week 6 matchup. So from my information, there were.
Oh, you go ahead.
You do the math while I do.
That's over 70.
Yeah. So, and that's not even saying how many if he had any receptions. Yeah. So, in my research, I found Ted Hall for Unioto had 7 rushing touchdowns in a game, and so Braylon Robertson had 7. I couldn't find any information that someone had more than 7 touchdowns in a game. Now, that's not to say that it hasn't happened, and it may not even be in that game. Ted Hall also had a 2-point conversion for 44 points. So I don't know if that could be the SBC record. One of these games I'm going to talk about, I feel like this player had more points, which was Ethan Fremder for Piketon, had 461 yards in a week 10 game against Southeastern. Neither team was good. And he was a senior. And I feel like, I don't know if they were beat up or if they just said, you know what? We appreciate you. You're getting the ball. And he went nuts. I remember that game because it was just it felt like each team just kept scoring. But every time you heard the score, it was him scoring for Piketon. So, he had 461 yards against Southeastern in that game. And then also Seth Harden for Westfall against Waverly in the playoffs in the second round had 442 yards rushing. Both of those both of those games had more rushing yards for individual than someone who just got signed by the Browns, Kareem Hunt.
There we go.
Kareem Hunt's career high was 415 in high school. So, Seth Harden and Ethan Fremder both beat that. But the Seth Harden game was hilarious because it was they just literally just kept running either off tackle left or off tackle right. It was just, they switched it every play. It was the same play every play. And dude was just gaping holes and was fast, and it was fun. So Braylon Robertson with a historic game for the Bearcats. I believe he got like the performance of the week before for SOSA, and then
I know we try not to do the same person, so we may have picked the wrong.
The wrong week.
Should have just tried to find somebody else for last week and then done him this week.
Yeah, now we're going to talk some defense.
Yeah.
Someone played defense.
So the Portsmouth Trojans were 2-3 going into week 6, coming off of a game where they gave up 50 points. Now, it was to Gallia, so, and even I can't remember the week 1 score, but I know to Valley they gave up it was 59-29, so they almost gave up 30 points to Valley, who, as we've talked about, is towards the bottom of the SOC too. But coming off of a 50-18 loss to Gallia, this Portsmouth defense forced 4 turnovers and held a Coalgrove team that was averaging 40.5 points per game to only 6. And not to mention, Portsmouth's defense was giving up about 33 points per game as well. And to cap it all off, Leo Poxes had a 52-yard fumble recovery return. Now, they were already winning, obviously, 7-6, but the 52-yard fumble recovery pretty much iced it up for the Trojans, and they pick up what I believe was their second league win. And I think they're going up against Chesapeake this week, so another test within the in the OVC. But yeah, Portsmouth, kind of a surprising defensive effort. I mean, that's not too often you come off of a 50-point, you give up 50 points, and the next week you give up 6, but they found a way to do it, and it helped them get the win.
Like, that's all that. Like, that's a full team and coaching effort to make that big of a change. Because, like you mentioned, Coalgrove scoring over 40 points a game. It's not like they were coming into the game
averaging like 21 points or like anything less than that.
But, scoring a defensive touchdown, holding the opponent, scoring as many points on defense as you give up is awesome for Portsmouth. 1 week after that, probably, I would say embarrassing loss to Gallia, 50-8 the week before. Like, it's just great bounce back for the Trojans. Yep. So I'm glad you picked them as one of our impact.
I think that was our first time an impact player
was a whole unit.
Just 11. Well, obviously they probably subbing it out, but like 11 to 14 or 15 guys just made the list. So
yeah, and then our last impact player of the week was Ethan Summar from Unioto. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, over 100 all-purpose yards. He had I believe it was a 50-yard catch and run. It was kind of like watching it was kind of like Newton Hoops kind of went into Mahomes mode at that point of just like he was on the move and just it looked like he was almost just kind of throwing it away. And then all of a sudden Summar comes out of nowhere and makes a catch and breaks a couple tackles. And like he is, yeah, some real nice yak on that. But yeah, he hadn't gotten a lot of touches on offense. He'd been mostly playing middle linebacker, doing a really good job defensively for them. But I think, Coach Hoops and staff saw something that made them want to go with like the 2-back set between Summar and Connor Dollison in the week. And they both ran for over 60 yards in the win. Just kind of a balanced attack for them. But one of the things I don't want to say who the collision of the week was because it's not one of our sponsors, but on WKKJ, Summar also won their big hit of the game because he had 2 huge hits on defense of the game. He also had his 5th fumble recovery on the year. Unio's defense has now forced 22 turnovers through 6 weeks. Something that, they forced like 29 last year in pretty good defense there. But one of the things they've done this year is they've been ball hawking. Caden Cartwright and Ashton Crace each with 4 interceptions apiece for them. David Long, one of their linebackers, with 2. They've recovered 12 fumbles as a team, and Summar has really been one of the big highlights for them on that side of the ball. It's in an SVC that defense has been optional. Yeah. That's kind of what I was trying to think of earlier is, it's been optional, but for Unioto, it's been something they've been pretty proud of throughout the season. And Summar is a huge part of that. They have a really good defensive line with Perkins, and Will Fleck had 16 tackles in that game. I believe I want to say it was like 12 were solo. The dude was just flying everywhere.
A big kid coming off the edge.
Yeah, big kid coming off the edge. Did a really good job for them. I don't think they played with Marcel James in the game. So that's, hopefully that's not a long-term loss for Coach Hoops on the defensive side, because he's a nasty kid up front. But Sheldon Noel, has done a really good job, or Shandon Noel has done a really good job for them stepping in up front. Ben Griffin did a good job defensively in that game. Holding a Piketon team that scored a lot of points to only 8 second half points, and a lot of that came on a big catch and run where Ashton Christ slipped in coverage. So, it's a big win for them as they move into week 7 to face an Adina team that puts up a crazy amount of points. Maybe the worst defensive team in the state, but they put up a lot of points. So it's going to be a big test for, the defense over there for Unioto.
So we'll look at 4 games in week 7, then we'll jump into our power rankings to wrap it up. John will stay in the SVC, 2 offenses that have proved to be pretty solid in Westfall and Zane Trace.
Yeah, Zane Trace has done it in some different ways, and we thought it was going to be kind of going back to normal in week 6 with Carter Langley running the show for them, but he just came in. He was, I believe he was 4 for 5 for almost 100 yards passing in the game, threw a couple balls downfield, but mostly it was a lot of Blake Phillips that we saw in week 5 down at Piketon. They ran a lot of the Wildcat. They used Silas Stewart in week 5. He had almost 100 yards receiving on a lot of those pop passes, or the jet sweep passes. But it was Aiden Dunn in week 6 who had 179 yards receiving. So it was it's a team that they haven't been as good defensively as they have been in the past few years, but they've started to put up some points. 49 points against Adina in week 4, 35 the last 2 weeks. Now Westfall, man, they can put up points in a hurry. Bryce Wickline does a really good job running the show for them. They had no turnovers for the first time all year in their 62-28 win over Southeastern. So I know Coach Stepp was really happy with that. Wickline's put up a lot of yardage this year, a lot of short passes, but to getting the ball to guys who can really make things happen. Trent Walters is one of those guys. Super fast. I think he's had over 20 stolen bases each season so far as a high schooler that now is a senior. Can really make a lot of things happen. Jaden Toller is another one of those kids that when he gets the ball can make stuff happen. Bryden Gall, I think this is his first year playing. He had a couple.
I know we've seen him in basketball a little bit.
Yeah, I think he had 2 long touchdowns in week 6. It's just it's a team with a lot of guys that can make things happen. Cade Hall in the running game, Joey Wright in the running game. Wickline's another one in the running game, can really make stuff happen. So for Zane Trace, I think this is going to be a game like the Piketon game where they've got to really control the tempo and make it hurt whenever Westfall doesn't score. Because Westfall can really score in a hurry, but they don't have a ton of depth. So I think if Zane Trace can control the tempo and kind of pound at Westfall, they can get another win. But I do think this is going to be an interesting game. Going to be on the turf. I think it's going to be something Westfall's going to really enjoy because of just how fast they are. I think this is going to be another high-scoring game. I'm going to say 42-35. I'm going to take the Pioneers to stay unbeaten in SVC play. But a win for Westfall, and they're more or less in the playoffs at that point. So this is a huge game for them.
They're in the same division, Westfall and Zane Trace.
Yes. Both Division 5 schools would be a big point game for Westfall for sure, because St. Trace has gotten rolling, winning their last 4 after starting off with when we go to our power rankings, 2 of our teams that we both have in the top 10 losses to Logan Elm and in Waverly. I believe you have them in your top 10, but I didn't want to speak for you, but so this should be a really exciting game on Friday night for sure.
Yeah, and then one other game we'll look at, we'll Take it back over to the FAC. It is Jackson at Miami Trace. Jackson still undefeated in the FAC. That one loss to Ironton. I think that was their week 3 matchup. Week 3 or 4.
Yeah, week 3. Because it was kind of weird because...
That was the Saturday game, wasn't it? Or was Wheeler's...
Ironton, no, it was a Friday, but it was just weird that like they played that game...
In that spot?
Yeah, like instead of playing it in like week 4 when it would make more sense logically for that. But I think it was because Ironton had a big non-league.
Oh, with Cabell Midland maybe the week after. Yeah,
I think they had a chance to do it. They had a showcase game down at Marshall and were able to, get out and do that.
But coming off of a league win, 49-21 in week 6 at Washington Courthouse, it's a tough offense to stop, right? You have Bodie Wolford and Cade Wolford and a lot of other guys as well. I mean, it's an extremely high-powered offense, and really I don't expect that to change much in week 7 when they travel to Washington Courthouse to take on Miami Trace, who picked up a 29-20 win over McLean. They're 4-2 overall, 1-0 in the FAC. I know Asher LeBeau had a big game against McLean, had like $172 and a score, and then Trey Robinette had a couple touchdown passes. I believe they were both to Garrett Guess, which really no surprise there.
You didn't have to guess on that one.
No, we did not. This game is a little similar, and obviously we'll see Courthouse and Miami Trace play in week 10, but to me this game is a little similar to the preview of that one last week, to where like I think Jackson wins, but at the same time, if there was a team that was going to beat Jackson in the FAC, I would say it was either be probably Courthouse or Trace, because I'm not sure if like Hillsborough, McLean, and Chillicothe are quite there. I'm leaving somebody out, and I can't think of them off the top of my head.
You got it.
Everybody?
Yeah, because they only play 5 weeks.
Oh, right. So, yeah, like McLean, Hillsborough, Chile, I'm just not sure if right now they're there. I think out of those 3, probably McLean would have the best chance. But, I mean, Miami Trace has some pieces. I mean, we saw them take down Waverly in week 1, and Waverly has shown out pretty well so far. So, we'll see. It's week 7, so both teams have had some time to figure things out. And it seems like since dropping weeks 2 and 3, Miami Traces maybe refound their footing a little bit. They're able to pick up the league win last week against McLean. So, we'll see what happens. I think it could be a little bit closer than the Courthouse games. I think what I've seen from Courthouse and Trace, like if I had to pick a winner between those two, I would probably take Miami Trace. But I think that game in week 10 between those two schools will be really close. But for this one in week 7, I'll probably roll with Jackson, but same thing with Courthouse last week. Would not surprise me if Trace would be the team to knock off the Ironman here in week 7.
Yeah, it should be an interesting matchup for sure. I think that it's a Miami Trace team that, like you mentioned in that week 1 game, we thought was going to be kind of rolling throughout the season, but did you see the Wilmington and Clinton Massey score? It was
I did not.
It was a 1-score game.
I'm assuming Massey won.
Yeah, but that like never happens in that rivalry. I think it's been like once in the last, it was back-to-back years like a 1-point game. And besides that, Massey has just destroyed Wilmington. And so it's a really good Wilmington team this year. So, that's not a bad loss. Obviously, Logan Elm is
where they're at.
Yes, been very strong. So not a bad loss there either. But yeah, it's going to kind of go, for me, going to go back to the OVC. Yeah, you know me. With Chesapeake, you don't get it.
I don't.
Yeah, when Naughty by Nature came out, I was like 7.
Naughty by Nature?
Yeah. You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. I'm pretty sure that was. I'm not going to really say. I think they claimed it was like other people's problems or something, but I'm pretty sure it was not that. Yeah, so probably switch off of that. So we're going to go to the OVC, and with Chesapeake at Portsmouth, I think it's going to be, for Chesapeake, they started off 3-0, which was the first time in a long time for them. Now they're 0-3 in the OVC, though. things don't get any easier as they travel to Portsmouth, who I think probably got a little healthier last week, because I know they've been dealing with a lot of health issues. With are they going to be able to slow down Chase Highland in Portsmouth? It's a tough matchup for Chesapeake, but with Cameron Shockley running the ball for the Panthers, they've been able to put up some points in other games. So can they kind of get back to being more high flying like they were early in the season? I mean, they had that big upset over Minford when the 2-point conversion actually worked late in the game.
The one time this season.
Yeah. But, one player, they got Dylan Maynard as well. Philip Thacker, a big, strong kid for them. They like to run the ball at Chesapeake. Can they do it against a Portsmouth team that has more confidence after they just faced a very run-heavy team
that beat Chesapeake?
Yeah,
that
beat
like
Chesapeake
44-30 too.
Yeah, so are they going to be able to slow down Portsmouth? It's going to be tough for them. I think this is one of those games that could be like a sleeper, high-scoring game. But if Portsmouth can just kind of show out defensively like they did in week 6, I could see this being a game for Portsmouth to keep getting right as they start making their march back towards the playoffs, as they're going to need to win 2 of their last 4 to get in playoff contention. It would still be pretty tight at that point at 5-5 for them. So it's a big time game for Portsmouth that they want to get back into the playoff race.
Then one final game we'll look at is, I don't want to say the MSL title game, but it's probably the battle between the 2 best teams in the MSL at the moment.
Has Logan Hamilton Townships.
Have they had a good season?
Yeah, they're off to a really good start too. So I mean, it's kind of a 3-team race at this point. But
because obviously Hamilton not like
we don't
in our coverage area.
I mean,
so
they are technically Columbus, like the very southern point of
and then
Columbus.
Has Logan? I probably should look. Has Logan Elm? Have they played Taze yet?
Let me look real quick. I believe they have.
But we'll dive a little bit more into the game in and of itself. Bloom-Carroll comes in 5-1, 3-0 overall. The one loss to Harvest Prep in week 1, and most recently we've seen what Harvest Prep did to what we think is a pretty solid Wheelersburg team. So no shame in that one. The 2022 D3 state runner-ups. I think they've made it to the Final Four, like all 3 of the last. I think they were Final Four, and then runner-ups last year. 45-3 last week.
Pretty good run.
Yeah, that's okay.
Hey, but what happened when you played them?
We scored our first ever touchdown.
Yeah, let's
Chance
go.
Smith, baby. But I'm going to say this.
Playoff touchdown. It wasn't the first.
Playoff touchdown. I'm going to say this to try to make it sound like a close game, but after trailing by 3 at 3-0 against Fairfield Union, Bloom-Carroll rallied off 45 unanswered points to win 45-3, pushed them to 3-0 in the MSL. They have also had wins over Amanda Clear Creek and Liberty Union. You have quarterback Ethan Thanthanavong.
Go with your heart.
I'm rolling with Thanthanavong. It's a really strong team. It's who I picked in the preseason to win the league, but that was also before I knew how strong this Logan Elm team has been, and really, they've picked up some good wins over some local teams such as Zane Trace in week 2, and then knocking off Miami Trace, I think week 4 or 3, one of those 2. Week 3. But most recently for the Braves, 35-17 at Liberty Union. They also have wins over Circleville and Fairfield Union within the MSL. Quarterback Aaron Walters on this season, that's through 6 games, has 1,269 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions for the senior Landon Thompson on the ground. Has 600 yards on 88 attempts, also 15 rushing touchdowns. Out wide, Carson Summers and Hunter Kersey both have 20 or more receptions on the season. Camden Red is right there at 19, although leads the team in receiving touchdowns with 6. As of now, not 100% sure, but this is looking to be the game we'll live stream this week. There's a little, I don't want to, hiccup as of right now. We're not 100% sure. There's a good chance. It's one we've been looking at for probably the last
I believe
4 or 5 weeks.
I thought it was pretty much after they beat Zane Trace was kind of like, oh, they got a good chance to do this. But then, especially after they beat Miami Trace the way they did, was like, okay, for sure, we want to get there for this game. But looking at the MSL schedule, it's really interesting how it's going to finish off because for Bloom-Carroll, they've got Logan Elm, Tays Valley, and then Hamilton Township 3 straight weeks. So it's not real easy for them. For Logan Elm, after this week, they've got Amanda Clear Creek and then Tays Valley. Then they finish with Hamilton. So it's
Hamilton hammered Tays Valley 51-17. Hamilton might be a contender there too. I take back what I said about this being the MSL championship game. Hamilton looks, just by looking at their box scores, pretty impressive as well.
And then if you look at I know Lancaster's not great. Like they're 3-3, but they've played really good defense. Hampton scored 57 on them. Like I'm not sure if Lancaster's given up 57 the rest of the year. Like it's just been like they've since week 3 they get beat pretty bad by Canal, who's also undefeated. But Lancaster's given up 0, 10, and 21. So they've given up 31 points in 3 weeks and gave up 57 to Hamilton Township. So I think, whoever wins this game
will remain unbeaten in the MSL.
Yeah, and we'll still, Hamilton, is very good, obviously.
Right.
But, getting a win here would be a huge step in the right direction for whichever team gets it.
I tell you what, looking ahead, like, even if we weren't able to get, if something were to happen and we weren't unable to live stream this game between Bloom-Carroll and Logan Elm, if Logan Elm were somehow able to knock off Bloom-Carroll, they have Hamilton Township week 10. And,
that might be
that could potentially be the MSL title game.
That could possibly be a 9-0 versus 9-0.
Right, 9-0, 9-0, undefeated in the MSL. That could be a big one that is at Logan Elm, so... we'll see what happens here.
But Bloom is
Bloom's won the league. I know I probably said it in the preseason. It's probably in my notebook right here, but I'm pretty sure Bloom has won the league like a handful of years consecutively. So
one cool thing, and I'll just throw this out there with for our area listeners or watchers, whatever. Coach Wade Bartholomew, who went to Westfall. He coached at Huntington, Gallia. I think he was only at Gallia for a year before he went to Bloom. So he left Bloom 2 years ago after they went to back-to-back state semifinal games. Then obviously they got to the final last year. But he took an Olentangy team that was not very good last year or the year before, and they were 5-0 before losing a tough one to another really good Olentangy Berlin team this week. So, obviously good coaches can pick it up wherever they're at. Yeah. So, it's good to see him having success, especially someone who is local to the SOSA area, at least growing up wise.
So we'll jump now to our power rankings as of week 6, headed into week 7. I reckon I'll start it off here.
I reckon you will.
The same top 3 with Ironton, Logan Elm, and Jackson. Now, the 4 spot is a little different as Gallia fell to Fairland. So I bumped Wheelersburg up to the 4, and that also allowed Fairland and West to move up one more as well. So it reads Wheelersburg at 4, followed by Fairland and West 5, 6. I dropped Gallia to 7, as I still think they've had a pretty impressive season so far. In the 8, I have Waverly, who I'm not even going to look at the score, but probably had a 40-point win over Oak Hill, I would guess. And then Unioto in my 9, and for the first time, Vinton County in my top 10, ringing it out at 10. So
we do have some slight differences.
I would rather it be like that.
Yeah, at least there is slight.
Same.
But
even before we started taping, I was like, my 1 through 6, I'm like fairly certain anybody that looked at our coverage area, this is probably what their top 6 would be. Mm-hmm. But like 7 through 10, it's like, for me anyway, it gets to the point where, do you want to rank these teams based on who you think would beat each other, Or do you want to rank these teams based on how they've done against who they've played? So, like for Vinton County, like, I have them at the 10, but, Eastern Pike is also undefeated and winning the SOC, but I'm not, like, and, like, you have a team with Waverly who has 2 losses. Now, do I really think Eastern would beat Waverly? Maybe not. Or do I think Unioto would beat Eastern? I don't know. And that's just kind of where it gets tough. So the way I kind of do it is just head-to-head deals. So I don't really, like, if Eastern were to go 10-0 undefeated, I would probably have them in my top 10 just because at that point they deserve it. But, we've been through 6 weeks. They're 6-0. They're definitely, on the bump to where, I think we talked kind of the Notre Dame is week 8. Week 8. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So if they're able to pick up a win there, I think those are probably the 2 top-ish teams in the SOC one.
And this is just, using, Fantastic 50, which uses all those computer simulations and whatnot. It does have Eastern as having the 107th out of 110 in strength of schedule in Division 7. So it's not like they've played a juggernaut of a schedule.
Right.
So, but, 6-0, 6-0. You got to beat who's on your schedule.
Right.
And that's literally all you can do. It's not, when they picked up Huntington and Southeastern to their schedule, I don't think they envisioned they would be a combined 1-11.
Right,
so, and then it's like I said, you beat who's on your schedule. So, but I do think it's important for us to give them a shout out in some way. And, I think that's where they would probably be in our also getting votes if you looked at our top whatevers. But so going to mine, like I said, it's pretty similar. I have Ironton at 1, Logan Elm at 2. Honestly, if Logan Elm beats Bloom, they may actually get up there. They might. I'll at least consider it. I mean, because Bloom's just like, they've been a juggernaut for the last few years anyway. So,
but it's the same case to where it's like,
but so is Ironton.
Well, right. And do you rank them based on what they've done against who they played, or do you rank them based on, do I think Logan Elm would beat Ironton head to head? And that's where it gets tougher for me because I just don't know which way to do it.
Right.
But
and that's why it's, that's why we each have our own instead of like an in general one. And I have
that's
Jackson.
why we don't have one of us represent the entire group as power rankings.
Yeah. Jackson, I have at 3. I have Fairland 4. I was really impressed with them.
Wait, start over. Who is your top 3?
Ironton, Logan Elm, Jackson.
Okay.
And then I have Fairland 4.
Okay.
I do have Wheelersburg 5. Now they have 3 losses. I think they probably could beat Fairland head to head, but I mean, their losses. I'm just gonna pull their schedule up real quick because it's
Wheelersburg lost to Harvest Prep.
Yes.
Yeah, I take that back. I'm moving.
I mean, it's Harvest Prep though. Harvest Prep.
Yeah. I'll keep it how it is.
So, Fantastic 50 has Harvest Prep as the number 37 team in all of Ohio. Across all divisions. So that's having a Division 5 team as one of the top 40 teams. So it's, so far they lost a 3-point game to Ironton. They won a 3-point game against McNicholas, who is ranked 123 out of the 700 plus teams. They lost an 8-point game to Jackson, who's 124. They beat Northwest. They beat Valley. Both were shutouts. Then they lost to Harvest Prep. So, I mean, they don't have the best wins, but their losses are all against really, really good teams. So, I mean, I can't have them below 5th. They've got Oak Hill this week, I think.
Are they going to?
Right.
That's at Oak Hill.
Yeah.
So, it seemed like that was kind of like said after week 3, but Oak Hill's just continued to play, so they may finish out the season.
So I wonder if they had some illness going on at that same time, and that kind of made it to where there's a lot less team-wise. But weeks 8, 9, and 10, you've got Waverly, Minford, West. So, I mean, I think we'll see more of what Wheelersburg truly is at that point. But, I mean, their schedule has been very tough so far.
And really the way it's looking, it's starting to look like West and Wheelersburg week 10 could be another, SOC2 championship game just like it was last year. So.
Yeah. And then I have Wheelersburg 5th. I have West 6th. I've been impressed with them the last 2 weeks. This past week was, I mean, just pretty much domination against a Minford team that's pretty good. That couldn't really get anything going at all. I have Gallia 7th, Waverly 8th, Unioto 9th, and then
Wait.
So I have that. It's pretty much the same there.
I know. I'm trying to think of who you could possibly have 10.
I have a tie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Well, it's Eastern and somebody.
Not Eastern.
No? It's got to be Zane
It is
Trace.
Benton County and Paint Valley.
Okay.
Now, Paint Valley I had 8th.
Did you like just add Benton County to that after we talked earlier?
Yeah. I was like, man, Benton County has done.
Well, they've hammered people.
They've hammered
just been
people.
winning. I mean,
Yeah.
and really, they're a blocked PAT from taking Unioto to overtime and presented by McDonald's, and then
Yes.
who knows what happens there?
Yeah. So I mean, I've been impressed with Benton County, and like we just haven't really talked about them much because
Right,
we
the
don't
TVC
talk about the
is-
TVC as a
right.
whole.
Yeah. Even though
And the TVC is not very good. Like honestly.
Even though we talked about Athens a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
The main time we talk about the TVC is when, like, you have, and obviously Logan not in the TVC, but when you have two teams that have a game like they had where there's like a 24-point, it wasn't 24-point comeback, but a 24-point fourth quarter, like a 18-point comeback, 18 unanswered. I mean, it was just a crazy game.
Now, this is one of those things where also Fantastic 50 has Benton County's schedule is the 104th out of 105 toughest schedules.
Wow.
So the second easiest schedule.
Who was 105?
I don't know. They just have like each team.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So, and Unioto with a juggernaut of 102 out of 105. So the TVC is not very good. But they won 2 scores over Circleville, Trumbull, beat Meigs 54-0. They beat Athens 35-13. They beat Alexander 62-0. They play Northwest this week. They play River Valley. Then they have at Nelsonville, York in week 9. That's going to be the big one because Nelsonville is always a really good program. So that's the only game that.
Do you have Nelsonville York's record?
They're 5-1.
Okay.
Their only loss.
It was to Trimble.
They did lose to Trimble in
I
week
remember
1.
Brock saying that.
Yeah, 14-12. They beat Newark Catholic, who's way down in Newark Catholic, with how they are, but still, it's Newark Catholic. Like they got some dudes still.
Right.
Even if they don't have as many dudes as normal, they still have some dudes. But they've taken care. They beat Bexley, who's a Division III school.
Detroit Lions.
Yes.
Literally just jacked their low. We're not getting into that,
But yeah, they do have the Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Oakland Raiders of Bidwell with River Valley because theirs is the exact same thing as the Raiders.
they have the Raiders logo?
Yeah, but to their credit, they've only been a school since like 1989, so it's definitely 100% the Raiders.
Well, and I definitely found some others too. Like I know West has kind of adopted like the PW thing, but like I've definitely seen Portsmouth West stuff where it's just the Wisconsin logo orange.
Yeah.
But like I know like on their football field and like I don't know if somebody did it, but I'm pretty sure their Max Preps logo was that Wisconsin W up until like last week because I remember checking it. Now it's just like I think it just says like Portsmouth West or it's that like PW logo they
I
have.
just wish it was the Capitol building. I love the Capitol building.
That is a cool logo.
I mean,
like
Wheelersburg is the Nationals W.
that is true.
Yeah.
Or Walgreens. either one.
Walgreens, yeah. I think Walgreens is the Nationals W.
It's literally the same thing.
Westfall was for a while.
I would have to look at it to see like what.
I think when I was coaching at Westfall, we got like a cease and desist on like using the Wisconsin W or something. Something weird, like to where we changed it.
But like seriously, off the top of my head, like I can't even think of what the difference between the Walgreens and Nationals. Like, is there a difference?
No, it's the
like,
same.
Any at all?
Yeah, it's the same.
God.
Which was probably the Washington Senators, which is the Rangers now.
I thought the Washington Senators were like the Montreal Expos.
No,
The Nationals.
The
are the
Nationals are the
Expos.
Expos, but the Senators are the Rangers, and the Brewers are the Seattle Pilots.
Seattle Pilots.
Seattle Pilots 1 year, and so after spring training, here's your baseball lesson of the week. After spring training in 1970, so 1969 they played in Seattle. 1970 after spring training they went to Salt Lake City. After they were in Arizona, their trucks and everything for the team were there. And they were waiting to find out if they were going back to Seattle or if they're going to Milwaukee. They went to Milwaukee, and they've never left. So they.
Is the stadium still there in Seattle?
I don't know. They played at some weird like outdoor stadium at the time.
Well, I mean, a lot of places were just like, well, 1970 maybe not, but a lot of those early teams just played in like rec parks and stuff.
Well, and then County Stadium was where the Brewers played, but it was also where the Braves played.
Well, they probably
when they were there. So it wasn't. It was like they already had They already had the stadium. Seattle was like trying to figure out how to like build the stadium, and eventually it ended up being the Kingdome, which is where like Ken Griffey Jr. played.
Oh yeah.
And that ended up being like 77 when they came in, and then obviously they play at Safeco or whatever it's called now. Which
it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm going to next year.
Pick some random cryptocurrency and throw stadium on there, and that's probably what it's called.
Yeah, I was in Los Angeles last year for like one of the 3 weeks that it was crypto.com arena, and then all of a sudden that place closed. And
crypto.com, which one was that?
That was the
Staples?
That was Staples.
I thought it was Bitcoin Arena. Somebody has Bitcoin on their
I want to say I know my
Wait, is it not crypto.com arena anymore?
It might be. I don't know. Let me look.
I'm surprised somebody like I mean obviously some of these like companies have thrown just ungodly amounts of money at some of these places, but like some of these teams with historic names, I'm just surprised they've just been so quick to drop. Well, like Heinz Field, like that was so iconic. Even like the ketchup bottles, and they just ditched it.
Yeah.
Or like Staples Center, nobody calls it. It's Staples Center. Nobody calls it Crypto.com Arena. Like that's ridiculous.
It's like if Fenway Park ended up being
or Wrigley.
Yeah.
Like they're never gonna like. I wouldn't think they would sell the rights to that, especially with like Wrigley. Like I've never been to Fenway, but like with Wrigley, they'd have to get rid of the red sign on the outside and everything.
They had to get rid of the marquee and everything. Yeah. And
so
it was the Heats went from American Airlines to whatever that one crypto place that closed down that like 100% was stealing people's money. and they all are, but
true.
Yeah. One of us might have lost some money in it. It's okay.
It wasn't me.
I got into it a little late.
It wasn't me.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's our power rankings.
Yeah. Plus our stadium naming right cryptocurrency gripes.
Yes.
Should be a fun week ahead, John, unless you have anything extra. I think we kind of added everything extra we had to say in, so.
Yeah, that kind of covered that. So the covered wagon for the week. So.
All right. Well, I believe that will do it for today's episode of SOSA Overtime, presented by McDonald's.
Ka-chow.